Hello, grade 7. How are you today? I hope you all are safe and well. Today our lesson is an inquiry lesson. We will talk about explanations geocentric model. We learned about the solar system, the moon, the planets, and we explained the movement of these objects in the sky and why they appear to move and how the Earth is moving. So today we will explain this lesson as a story for some astronomers and their theories or their explanations about models. They were using models to represent the solar system, and they were studying these models and trying to prove their theories about the solar system and discover everything about it. So open your books on page 64 and follow me, please. Past times. Imagine that you were living 2,000 years ago. Many things about your everyday life would be different, but some things would be the same. When you looked up, you would see the stars and planets change position just as they do today. So if we looked at the sky now, we can see the stars and planets change direction. They were doing this since years, thousands of years. People have always asked questions about the way the sun, stars, and planets moved. Why do they move that way? So this is a question that people could ask, or they were asking. Why do they move that way? So astronomical evidence. Astronomers start to study and trying to find any evidence that prove their theories about the solar system. In the ancient world, people told stories to their children. The stories explained why things happened, like the sun rising and setting and seasons of the year. People remembered the stories and told them to their children. So these are not scientific facts. These were just stories that people trying to explain things about that happened, or the rising of the sun and movement of the stars, movement of the moon, and changing the direction or positions of the stars every day. So they were telling these stories, and these stories they were transferring along generations from one generation to another. But there is a difference between stories and scientific explanations. Scientists ask questions. For example, why do the stars and planets move in the way that they do? So when they asked this question, this was leading them to find or to search about evidence, to find any evidence that prove or that can answer their question and prove it. So then they find evidence by making observations or measurements. They develop explanations to account for the evidence. Sometimes the explanations use a model. A model is a physical or mathematical way of explaining how something works, like a model of the solar system. So here these scientists, they were working using these models, trying to prove, because of course they cannot work on the real solar system, and they cannot travel from one planet to another, or to see the stars and to see the whole solar system. So they were using small models and developing these models years and years after years. So this model is a physical or mathematical explaining a way to explain how something works. So they need to prove it and they need to develop it. If this model works with their explanations, they will accept it unless they found something is not matching or not typical for their explanations or their questions. The invention of numbers and of writing were important for developing explanations. So here, without these numbers, people cannot make measurements. If they could not write down their measurements, they could not look for patterns. So this is very important in any studies or any explanations or any questions. They need to use numbers, they need to write letters to write down measurements, and even notes, and use numbers to write these measurements. Because without these measurements, or without writing down these measurements, they cannot find the pattern and they cannot find any mistake that they made. First model is called Geocentric Model. Ancient Greek astronomers believed that the Earth was at the center of the universe. So what is the universe? The universe is everything that there is. The model that they developed with the Earth at the center is called the Geocentric Model. Geo comes from the Earth, or means Earth in the Greek language, and centric because they thought that the Earth is in the center of the universe. This is the universe and the Earth is in the center. Plato and Aristotle were Greek astronomers who lived about 2,400 years ago. They developed a geocentric model. In this model, the Earth was not moving, so this was their model. They were using this model as this is the universe and the Earth is in the center and it doesn't move. But the stars and planets moved around the Earth. The Greek astronomers thought that there were 7 planets, which are Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and the Sun, and the Moon. And then there were stars beyond them. So this was their explanation or their thought. In geocentric model, all these objects moved on spheres around the Earth, as they are doing now around the Sun, but they thought that the Earth in the center and they are in orbit around it. The Moon was on the sphere that was closest to the Earth. The stars were on the sphere furthest from the Earth. All the spheres moved at a steady speed, and all the objects, including the Earth, were spherical. So as you can see here, they thought that the Moon is the closest to the Earth, and here then the planets are furthest from the Earth, and they are moving at the same speed, and including the Earth. Here all of them they were spherical. Light could travel through the spheres called crystalline spheres. So they called that the light that could travel through them crystalline spheres. Retrograde motion. The model explained a lot of observations, but it didn't explain one important observation. The planets seemed to wander across the sky. They did not always go in the same direction. So here, they might explain everything about it or their observations, but they couldn't explain that the planets seem to wander, that they move from one place to another across the sky without going in the same direction every time. Ptolemy was another Greek astronomer who lived about 1,800 years ago. He developed the model to explain the motion of the planets. He added little circles on the top of the big circles that were the planets and of the planets, paths of the planets. He worked out how big they needed to be to explain the backward motion of the planets. So we said that these planets are not moving in the same direction. So he took small circles and he put them on the circles that they presented the paths of the planets, and he worked out the motion, the backwards motion of these planets. Ptolemy's model explained the motion of the stars and planets. It also predicted their future positions. He wrote about the model in a book that was used all over the world for hundreds of years. So this was his model, and like this. Okay, and it might explain a lot of things and the motion of the future motion or the future position of the planets. Evidence for the geocentric model. One of the most obvious observations about the Earth, that is the ground that you are standing on, doesn't feel as it's moving. This supported the ideas that the Earth was at the center of the solar system. So astronomers or scientists observed that we don't feel the movement of the Earth as we are standing, or the movement of the ground. So they said this supports our explanation that explanation that the Earth in the center of the solar system, or the center of the universe. Aristotle thought that the Earth was at the center of the universe. Why? Because if you drop something, it falls towards the Earth. He believed that all objects fell towards the center of the universe, so the Earth had to be in the center. So this is his thought. He thought that it was in the center of the universe, not the solar system, because if we dropped something, he didn't know about the gravity force. So he said everything in the universe, that if you dropped it down, it will fall towards the Earth. So that means it falls towards the universe, or the center of the universe. Ptolemy thought that the Earth was the center of the universe because half of the stars were above the horizon and half were below the horizon at any time. If the Earth was not at the center, the numbers of the stars above and below the horizon wouldn't be the same. So this was his explanation. He said, I think that the Earth is in the center of the universe because both stars at the horizon and the horizon are the same. Half of them at the horizon and half of them below the horizon. So if it's not in the center of the universe, that means they would not be the same number on both sides. If the Earth was moving, then a star would appear to move between January and July as the Earth moves around the Sun. The stars do move, but they are so far away you cannot see that movement without a telescope. So this was his explanation. We cannot see the movement of the stars, and the Earth is not moving. So if it's moving, that means they would appear to move between January and July. More evidence changes their explanations. Ptolemy geocentric model was very successful because it could explain lots of observations and make predictions. It was very popular model because it fitted in with what people could see. It would take evidence from things that they couldn't see to change the scientific explanations. So their explanations at that time, they were supporting their evidence, because they were fitting in with what people thought, or what people saw, or what people are seeing in the sky. So it was successful for hundreds of years in his model. So this is the story, or this is the story about the geocentric model, and I hope you understood the lesson. I will meet you in a new lesson. Don't forget to write solve these questions as homework. See you soon. Be safe, please, and we will meet in a new lesson. Bye bye.